Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share, and restack buttons. Well, is everything about to blow up in a big way? Unfortunately, I believe the answer is yes. And I think it's going to affect every person on earth. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the Israel-Hezbollah war. It's going on right now. That's been sort of going on for a while now, but really has escalated this week. And I think this is going to be more than just something that is localized to the area where the fighting is taking place. This is going to impact everyone on the globe. So we'll walk through that process and what's likely to happen next. What is the response likely to be to what's happened this week? So let's start with this article right here from Zero Hedge. This is from yesterday. It says, most intense Israeli bombing since Gaza war's start rocks Lebanon. And there's an update. We'll come back to this, but let's start with the beginning of the story down here. It says, Israel's military has just announced that IDF Chief Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi has approved operational plans as part of the continuation of the war in Israel's north against Lebanon's Hezbollah. Exchanges of fire grew overnight, and as of Thursday afternoon, heavier airstrikes on southern Lebanon have been reported, as well as more than 40 rockets fired from Lebanon into Israel. Local media says several Israelis have been wounded after a missile fired by Hezbollah hit a vehicle in northern Israel. Israel says the goal of the new escalated anti-Hezbollah operation is to allow the return of the 80,000 residents of the north who have been forced out of their homes for almost a year. At least 8 people in Israel were wounded Thursday as an anti-tank guided missile on the Lebanon border that was claimed by the Hezbollah terror group, while others were injured in a subsequent drone attack. And so here it says that these plans have been approved. Now note, it says the goal of the operation is to allow the return of 80,000 residents from the north who have been displaced since the October 7th attack. Now this should not be a new revelation. We've talked about this many times in the past. I want to refer you to the Substack at brittgillette.substack.com. There's an interviews tab that you can find, and we had a prophecy roundtable back in March 29th. This was on John Haller's site, Fellowship Bible Chapel. It was a prophecy roundtable titled Israel's Coming War in the North, and that was with John, Tom Hughes, and Pete Garcia and myself. We talked about this, not is there a coming war in the north, but about the coming war in the north, because we could foresee this. This is a matter of inevitability, because you cannot allow all of these residents to become permanently displaced. Otherwise, you're ceding that territory. So this escalation, so to speak, from Israel was easily foreseeable. We've been talking about it, predicting it, awaiting it. The question is, what is the response to that from Hezbollah and from Iran? Because Hezbollah is ultimately a proxy for Iran. So let's return to this article here, see what they had to say. It says, we are very determined to create the security conditions that will return the residents to their homes, to these communities with a high level of security, and we are ready to do all that is required to bring about these things, the IDF stated. The IDF has indicated that a new major operation has begun. Indeed, it appears the feared bigger Lebanese war has come. The IDF is currently striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon to downgrade Hezbollah's terrorist capabilities and infrastructure. For decades, Hezbollah has weaponized civilian homes, dug tunnels beneath them, and used weapons as human shields, having turned southern Lebanon into a war zone. It is likely that the rate of airstrikes and mortar fire will rise throughout the day and into the night. The major Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon have been confirmed through several circulating social media videos. It says Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah is currently addressing the pager attack crisis of the last 2 days, which has left at least 37 dead and hundreds wounded. I'm sure many of you already know much about that. That happened on Tuesday and then again on Wednesday. It says the televised speech is being closely followed by Lebanese and Israelis in the West alike. He described that Israel, quote, targeted thousands of pagers in one go on Tuesday and Wednesday. Quote, this is an act of war and a declaration of war by Israel on the Lebanese people, Nasrallah said, further describing the attack as an effort to kill 5,000 Lebanese people within minutes. And we'll look at the speech again in just a moment as this video goes forward. But it says he acknowledged that Hezbollah suffered a major and unprecedented blow, but also emphasized that over much of the past year, Israel has lost the north of its own country, and the settlers are screaming in pain and danger. Nasrallah says many of the pagers were out of service, turned off, or stored away. He repeats that Israel's willful intent was to kill thousands of Lebanese people within minutes. And I think it's key to focus on what he's saying, what what's being said in both sides of this article. Israel's goal is to restore those 80,000 residents to a secure north in Israel. And Nasrallah here is claiming, well, this is an attack on civilian people. I think this is a strategy that's long been used and will continue to be used. It noted in this article using homes and human shields in order to store these armaments that are intended to strike Israel. So there's going to be a PR war that takes place. And ultimately, this very well could be won or lost based on the PR war that takes place. It says regional analyst Aaron Lund said in his first speech after the explosions, Nasrallah repeats with maximum emphasis that Hezbollah will not, under any circumstances, stop striking Israel until a ceasefire is in place in Gaza. If Israel had hoped to force a deal on its own terms, that doesn't seem to be working. Nasrallah emphasized that Hezbollah will not stop its operations against Israel, quote, no matter what, so long as the Gaza operation continues. And we'll see that remains to be seen. They're claiming, well, the only reason we're striking, the only reason we're doing this is because of what's happening in Gaza. But of course, Hezbollah existed long before October 7th and the aftermath, the response to that. So we will see what happens next. But let's turn to this article on Ynet News. It says this can be seen as a declaration of war. Nasrallah says, as Israeli jets fly low over Beirut. We scroll down and we read from this Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, in a speech on Thursday, said that the coordinated attack attributed to Israel was the most severe and unprecedented blow in the history of the conflict. This is a declaration of war, he said. We know the enemy has technological superiority, especially supported by the U.S. and the West. We bet on jihad, attrition, we've won many times before. During the terror group's leader's televised speech, the first he's made since the coordinated explosions of Hezbollah's communication devices on Tuesday and Wednesday, Lebanese media reported Israeli fighter jets flying over Beirut, breaking the sound barrier. And we'll talk about that in a moment because there's updated news from just this morning. It says earlier media outlets reported jets over the Bekaa Valley and areas in the south. Nasrallah said Israel broke all rules in the coordinated explosions of the group's communication devices on Tuesday and Wednesday. He said the Israelis did not care if the pagers were among civilians, claiming dozens were killed, including women and children, and thousands wounded. This is an act of terror, a massacre, a genocide, he said. The terrorist leader also thanked Lebanon's government, Iran, and health officials for their actions in the wake of the explosion. So I think this is the key right here that we need to focus on, is the approach in this PR war is going to be Israel's creating terrorism. They're destroying indiscriminately men, women, and children. They're trying to commit massacres and genocide. And therefore, Iran, very well, I believe ultimately, and we're going to work through this video to this conclusion of why this is. I believe ultimately the response from Iran leads to one place, whether that happens immediately or sometime 2 months from now. I don't know when this would be. It would lead to this PR war and a closure of this right here, the Strait of Hormuz. So we've talked about this many times in the past. This is a powerful tool that Iran has at its disposal, leverage over the entire world. Because here we had the Persian Gulf, we had this one choke point by sea through which 21% of the world's oil production flows. 40% of all exported oil on the planet flows through the Strait of Hormuz on a daily basis. Iran has the ability to close this, just as we've seen that their proxy Yemen Houthi rebels have had the ability to close the Red Sea to naval traffic, shipping traffic. And so they could easily shut this down, and I could see an approach similar to what we saw in 1973 with what was called the Arab oil embargo following U.S. support of Israel during the Yom Kippur War. We saw OPEC cut off oil shipments to the United States and other nations that were allied with Israel at the time in response to that war. And what we saw was a quadrupling of oil prices. So I want you to think about what that would mean, the pressure that would put on other nations to tell Israel to stop. You must stop these attacks on Hezbollah so that this strait will open back up again. That's a lot of pressure that could be applied. Again, we saw a quadrupling of oil prices during the Arab oil embargo. If we saw that today, we'd be looking at $280 per barrel oil. Keep in mind, the all-time high oil price in dollars was $147 back in July 2008. That's significant because high oil prices put pressure on economic activity, because all economic activity is directly correlated to energy use. And the higher those energy prices become, the less energy that is used. That means the less economic activity takes place. I don't think it's any coincidence that we saw that all-time high oil price in July 2008. And then what happened in the rest of 2008 and in 2009? We saw just a couple of months later the failure of Lehman Brothers. We saw the Great Recession kick in, the Great Financial Crisis all over the globe shortly thereafter. It was already developing, just like we're already seeing those developing things now in the economy. But we have a very real prospect of this happening. I would put the odds very high that we will see this happen as a result of the conflict. And we'll talk about exactly why that is. But let's get back to what's happening and what happened today. So this is from the Jerusalem Post earlier today. It says IDF strike kills Hezbollah Radwan Force Chief Ibrahim Akil, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, in Beirut. It says the IDF conducted a targeted strike on Radwan Force Commander and head of Hezbollah operations, Ibrahim Akil, in Beirut, Lebanon, on Friday, the military reported. The IDF later confirmed the terrorist leader's elimination. Earlier, AFP, citing a close source to Hezbollah, reported that he perished in the strike. Reuters later reported the same, citing two security sources in Lebanon. The security sources told Reuters that other members of Hezbollah's Radwan force were killed when the Israeli strike hit a meeting they were attending. The Lebanese health ministry claimed that 8 had been killed in the strike and that another 59 were wounded. Earlier, Reuters reported that a thick cloud of smoke was seen climbing over the Lebanese capital, adding that residents of the city's southern suburbs reported hearing a blast. According to unconfirmed reports, the meeting the strike hit was between Palestinian and Hezbollah officials. So guys, we're seeing this constant attack, not just this week, it's really escalated in the last few days, but this attack by Israel to systematically take out Hezbollah and Hamas leadership. Many Iranian leaders have been part of that strike. And so we're seeing really a decapitation of leadership of Hezbollah. And we'll talk in just a second about, well, what does that mean? What is the next move for Iran in the midst of this? Because this is decision time for Iran. How they react will determine, well, what the world faces in the coming weeks. So, will they be able to continue with this decapitation of leadership? Well, let's take a look at this article. This is from over a month ago on Zero Hedge. It was titled, "Watch, Hezbollah Reveals Massive Underground Missile Base." And this included several videos that were put out, propaganda videos to try to threaten what capabilities could be launched against Israel in the event of this northern conflict that we're seeing right now. So this article says, quote, "The capabilities of the Islamic resistance, especially missiles, are fully prepared to defend Lebanon. The secrecy of the site allows Hezbollah's missile capabilities to be immune from any preemptive Israeli strikes." Al-Mayadeen continued, given that Iran has long had its own underground missile cities, which it showcases from time to time, it's likely that Iranian advisors led the way in helping to construct Hezbollah's tunnels. In the Gaza Strip, it's been precisely Hamas's use of literally hundreds of miles of underground tunnels which has allowed it to survive the Israeli onslaught. Small guerrilla teams can strike Israeli convoys and then rapidly retreat back to the tunnels. Israel says it has thus far killed at least 17,000 Hamas and Islamic Jihad militants, but there are believed to be still many thousands more. Given that most war analysts, excuse me, I'm losing my voice again. Given that most war analysts consider Hezbollah's capabilities to be superior to Hamas's, Israel would likely have an even tougher uphill battle if it eventually invades southern Lebanon in an effort to destroy or degrade the Shia paramilitary force. Well, guys, that war has begun. That invasion of southern Lebanon has begun. And the question is, can Hezbollah maintain its capabilities? How will they respond? And so we need to stay on top of events as they unfold, because this could have huge prophetic implications, because it's going to have a huge impact, I believe, on the entire world, as we'll talk about what is the decision tree for how this unfolds. So first we have to think about what is Israel's goal in this, because they mentioned earlier, in the earlier article we read, they mentioned the Litani River. There's a UN Security Council Resolution 1701, which effectively ended the 2006 Lebanon War. It stated that Hezbollah forces could not be south of the Litani River, which they have disregarded that UN resolution. They've set up shop all over southern Lebanon, south of the Litani River. What is Israel's goal in this conflict? Is it to simply push them back? They've stated their goal is to bring those 80,000 residents back into northern Israel in a secure environment. Will they be able to do that simply reinforcing or enforcing that UN Security Council resolution and pushing Hezbollah north of the Litani River? Or will they have to destroy Hezbollah completely in order to provide that security? In all likelihood, it is the latter. We've seen these underground tunnels. There's no reason to believe that these are fictional. We know the capabilities of Hezbollah are much greater than the capabilities of Hamas, and we've seen what's taken place over the past almost year now in that conflict. And so what is the goal? What is considered victory by Israel? I would believe it would be destruction of Hezbollah's capabilities to strike Israel, which means destruction of Hezbollah because they have the capability of hitting any part of Israel, not just northern Israel, but any part. So then the question becomes, well, if that is the goal, or if that is believed to be the goal by Hezbollah and Iran, if it put yourself in Iran's position, if you're there and you've invested years and billions of dollars in building these proxy forces across the Middle East, and your crown jewel is Hezbollah and Lebanon, and you think, okay, we're watching systematically that's being destroyed. That proxy army is being taken out as the command and control leadership's being taken out. The communications have been, for the moment, taken down, and they're striking missile sites and infrastructure that we've built up. So how do we deal with that? I think there's really only two choices from Iran's standpoint. Choice number one is to say, okay, this is an existential threat to Hezbollah. Therefore, let's have an all-out war between Hezbollah and Israel. So I don't believe Iran necessarily becomes directly involved in this war, but they are going to be supporting Hezbollah as their proxy. And they may say, let's unleash all of the arsenal rather than stand by and watch it get destroyed. So let's declare all-out war and do everything we can to use these Hezbollah forces against Israel to destroy Israel. And that becomes a very dangerous situation, because as we read in the Bible, there is a day coming when we will see the destruction of Damascus. This is from Isaiah 17, verse 1. It says, "This message came to me concerning Damascus. Look, the city of Damascus will disappear. It will become a heap of ruins." And Isaiah 17 goes on to describe large destruction in great parts of northern Israel as well. So let's hope none of this is coming right now. I mean, we know it's coming because the Bible says that it's coming. But my point in bringing that up is the destruction of Damascus in all likelihood occurs as a retaliatory strike by Israel against the strike that destroyed a large part of northern Israel in Isaiah 17. We have a scenario set up right now where we could see that happen. If Hezbollah takes the position, we need to unleash our arsenal, we're going to try to overwhelm Israel's Iron Dome system by launching everything, putting forth everything that we can to destroy Israel. Israel won't simply stand by and let that happen. They would likely respond with nuclear weapons or some weapons of mass destruction. And we know, as we saw earlier today, they didn't hesitate to attack in Beirut to take out some of those Hezbollah leadership. Well, we know Damascus is a hotbed of terrorist leadership. So we would see that as a prime target for Israel to strike against in the event that we see this all-out war take place. Once that happens, if they go all out and just destroy Hezbollah using weapons of mass destruction. Then I think we see that PR war intensify, and we end up with the Strait of Hormuz blocked by Iran, and this PR war put out to the world. The Strait of Hormuz will be unblocked and freely navigable again once Israel backs off and stops this assault on Hezbollah. And so, guys, we could very well see scenario one, we have all-out war. I believe that could involve, remains to be seen, but could involve the fulfillment of Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17. I believe these are the same conflict. The reason I believe that is if you look at verse 13 in both of those, Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17, you read this. In Psalm 83, many people who are I highly respect think, oh, this isn't a prophecy of things to come, and that maybe I'm wrong. I admit I could be wrong. I don't think that's not the way that I read it. But those who say that it's not say it's simply a prayer against Israel's enemies. But let's look at what this prayer says in verse 13. It says, "Oh my God, scatter them like tumbleweed, like chaff before the wind." And then we read in Isaiah 17, which again, many people say, no, this was fulfilled in the past. I believe it's not, because it says Damascus will never be inhabited again. And we know that Damascus is the longest continuously inhabited city on the planet, according to the historical records we have. So I believe it's yet to be fulfilled. But verse 13 of Isaiah 17 says, "But though they thunder like breakers on a beach, God will silence them and they will run away. They will flee like chaff scattered by the wind, like a tumbleweed whirling before a storm." So that is identical. You look at the original translation, it's the same, almost word for word, the same words used. So I believe they're one and the same, and we could very well see that play out in the days ahead. Either way, no matter whether we see this all-out war that fulfills these prophecies or not, I think we either see in the aftermath of that, or we see very soon, if Iran decides we're going to have a strategic retreat, we're going to try to preserve as many of these assets as we can in order to fight another day for whatever strategic reason they may have, they would very well probably turn to this trump card they have with the Strait of Hormuz and say, "Hey world, we're going to block this," out of protest to the terrorism that Israel has thrown upon the world and exploding these devices, killing women and children. They're bombing these sites. They're bombing schools. They're bombing homes. We've seen the PR war going on for many years. They could escalate it here, and just as we saw with the 1973 Arab oil embargo, they could block this. And guys, that's why I say, is everything about to blow up in a big way? I don't think we're talking, nuclear war. The Bible clearly claims there's not an all-out nuclear war that destroys the human race, because humanity is still around when Jesus returns. We're looking at a localized kinetic fighting conflict right now, meaning the firing of missiles and the use of these military assets on the ground is in Lebanon, Israel, probably parts of Syria. But this will have global implications, because what happens to global financial markets? What happens to global supply chains as a result of this war? And particularly if we see the Strait of Hormuz shut down, if we see this blocked, we would see skyrocketing oil prices, which the depression I believe the global economy is already in would become very severe quickly. We would see a crash of financial markets. This would totally transform the world in many ways. So guys, we really need to be paying close and careful attention to what's developing on the ground here. I would recommend, as we've talked about in the past, having a deep pantry, having a full tank of gas, because this conflict, the moment it erupts, if we see this transpire, as I believe that it will, well, you may find gasoline unaffordable. You know, it wouldn't be the same situation we see with the credit freeze that we've talked about, that one day will come, where there would be no gas at the gas station or no food at the grocery store. Those things may be there, but you may find it hard to buy the gas or to get to the grocery store. But if you've got a deep pantry, you've got a full tank of gas, then you can use that as sparingly as you need to, and it limits your trips to the grocery store because you've got a supply of food stored at home. So I would be prepared for this. And hopefully I'm wrong about all of this. I hope that I'm wrong about all of this. There's suffering on many fronts would occur as a result of all of this. But I believe this, just as we looked back in that March 29th roundtable and said, there's a coming war in the north between Israel and Hezbollah. It's inevitable. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And the reason is the displacement of these citizens. Israel has to act. Well, likewise, I can look at this and say, well, what does Iran have to do? And I believe it's inevitable that they either go all-out war, or they have a strategic retreat and try to preserve as many of their assets as they can, and they engage in a PR war and a shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz. I don't see that there's any other choice available in this for Iran, and therefore, if there's no other choice, they're going to take one of those two choices. It's just me thinking out loud. So, well, what do you think? Leave your comments below. If you disagree, that's totally fine. Maybe you've got a better grasp of the situation than I do. Let me know what you think below. But guys, this is where I think this is all headed. So just make sure that you are prepared for this as much as possible. Hopefully, the rapture of the church occurs before all of this happens. That would be fantastic, but there's no guarantee of that. There may be suffering ahead for many people around the world. So make sure that you are prepared for that. So guys, as I'm recording this, it's 1 o'clock right now. I'll get this up as quickly as I can. Normally the videos come out at 1 o'clock, but I was out of town on a retreat with my 2 eldest children in their school. So there's a lot of catching up to do. I just got back late. Well, last night, not late last night, but there's a lot to catch up on and a lot in the news cycle to catch up on. So you'll be seeing this a little bit later than normal. Jenny says hello to all of you out there. Thanks for watching. Again, leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. When you do that, more people see these. And I'll be back with updates as all of this unfolds. Till then, God willing, I will see you on Monday. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to visit my Substack at brittgillette.substack.com. There you'll find my latest videos and articles, as well as notes, where I share the latest news headlines, the articles I'm reading, and the videos I'm watching. Subscribe for free, and each new post on Substack will be sent directly to your email. Just scroll to the bottom of the homepage and hit the subscribe button. As an added bonus, your first welcome email will include a link to a copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt Gillette on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus the author and perfecter of our faith.